What's going on, guys? I just wanted to thank everybody for the support at the Canadian Nationals. Todd and I had an incredible time, and we were able to shoot an hour and a half long tire masterclass that Todd walked some of the guys in Canada through his process of how to true the zero graining super grips. So a couple things to note before we get into this. Firstly, we were running a 17 millimeter air wheel from NSR. We were running NSR Zero Grip tires, and we were allowed to run the foam inserts. So there's a couple things here that you'll notice along the process that are specifically related to those particular tire and wheel combinations. But this process is really, you could do this through almost any tire other than the G25. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the video. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Todd will answer all of them and I will watch eating popcorn. No, we'll do our best to answer them. And if you guys have any other requests, definitely keep them coming in the comments. And then I'm also working on the Canada recap video. It has the most clips of any video I've ever done, so it's just taking a while. And we have some podcast stuff coming up and a review of the +1 DFC02 controller. So enjoy the video. See ya.
All right, so first things first, we're gonna prep our wheels. We're gonna glue the foam inserts to it, prep our tires, and glue the tires onto the wheel. So what you really wanna do is make sure to scuff up the outer shoulders. And for that, you can use any number of things. It's not really all that important, the grit of sandpaper. You can use like 120 works pretty well.
Why do you scuff the shoulder?
So it like gives it more tooth, but something for the glue to really grab onto, because the aluminum's pretty smooth, and one of the worst things you can have happen is for a tire to come unglued during racing, because the way that affects the handling of the car is just really, really poor. So just take this and kind of just a light scuff. You're not trying to like go crazy. You just need the surface to not be crazy smooth. The other thing you can do is just run it on the truer and actually just touch it with a piece of sandpaper. In fact, that can be quite a bit quicker.
So another thing that I sometimes do is I will actually wash these with Dawn or liquid soap to make sure that the manufacturing oils are off of them and stripped.
Yeah, and so once I've done this, once we've given it a scuff, I'll take some. I'll usually do it with like a foam Q-tip or something, but we can just use a piece of microfiber, and this is 99% rubbing alcohol, and just give them a wipe. So you get anything off of there, you want it as clean of a surface as possible. Again, like if you want it to stay glued for a long time, take the extra time to get it nice and clean and ready now, and then you're gonna have fewer problems with it then. Okay. For the tire, what I like to do is use this like rolled up sandpaper, and you just kind of fit the tire on there and give it a turn. This kind of takes that like top layer of rubber off, gives it a little bit of a rougher surface, and then same thing, you're just going to clean the insides of it with some rubbing alcohol. And this is any mold release or anything that's like on the tires from when they were made. This just gets that off of there, and it improves the adhesion of the glue quite a bit.
So this is just a sandpaper cigar there?
Yeah, basically.
Rolling papers made of sandpaper?
Yeah.
Don't worry, this video is not, it will not be for children on YouTube.
Great. Then the next thing we want to do is start getting our foam insert on here. You can use like really, really thin double-sided tape, like the 3M tissue tape works really well. Or if you're really careful and just use very light amounts, you can use a little bit of CA glue. The thing you want to avoid is letting the foam soak up some of that glue, because once that dries, that's going to be a hard bump in the foam, and that's going around every time that tire turns around. So we're going to be extra careful and do the glue method. I like to use like leftover parts, header cards.
Did you want some B7000 to use?
Oh, that might not be a bad idea, actually. It's a good suggestion. So Ian actually just had a great suggestion. Using B7000 or a similar glue is E6000. Something that dries a little more rubberized. And really you just want, again, you really only need to just hold the foam in place while you're going to be truing it. Once the tire's on, you don't really need to be holding anything in there. So just kind of go around, pull up the insert, and get a little dab under there. Again, you're not trying to go too crazy.
You're just holding it in place so that when you true it,
it's not going to go flying all around and
yeah.
It's like the tire truing version of tack welding something. Okay, so once that dries up a little bit, and probably actually already use it. Next thing we're going to do is go to our truer here. We've got some tire dust on there from the last set of tires that were trued. And one of the best and easiest ways to get this off are with these little rubber abrasive cleaners. You can find these on Amazon pretty easily. They come in like sheets and you can just cut off pieces and you just run it over the drums and that pulls off anything that gets kind of stuck in between the grains of the sandpaper. So just real lightly kind of run that over the drum and it cleans just all that rubber off of there. It's going to help your drums cut better.
Especially if you have like a super sticky rubber on there from a previous tire.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes you'll just notice like your drums stop cutting, even though maybe they're fresh drums, and it's just because they're clogged up with rubber. It can also burnish, and that can be one of the things that builds up heat in a tire. It's just better to keep the drums clean as much as possible to just give you fewer headaches.
How's the live studio audience feel about this? Okay, perfect.
All right. Should we do the other one? So we can do both of these at the same time? Let's do this real quick.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we've got both of these mounted up, and it's not too important what speed you do these at. Maybe you don't want to like totally spin them up super fast so that you're not expanding the foam, but at first we really just want to get them down closer to the height of the top of the air rib, but you still want to leave a little bit there. Actually, this is a good point to point out. We're truing these on a full height air rib here. In an ideal world, if we had our choice, we would true that air rib down just to get it out of the way of the foam. It really lets the foam work more. And in that case, you would true the height of the foams really based on the inner dimension of the tire. You want it just barely pushing outward on the tire. When we've got full height air ribs in here, you want to leave it just a little bit taller than the air rib so that the foam is actually able to support the surface of the tire. That helps prevent the tire from folding in to that air rib. You'll see a lot of times they get that ridge right where that inner air rib is, and the foam helps prevent that.
So what is the foam pushing out on the tire gently? What is the concept behind that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing as like a pneumatic tire on a car, right? It's effectively the air pressure in the tire. The foam is playing that role since these aren't tires that can hold air. So it's just adding support to the whole surface of the tire, makes the support consistent across the surface of the tire. So you're letting the tire mechanically grip better. You can start to use harder compounds of tires that way, which then gives you fewer issues with things like differentialing and things like that, where a higher grip tire struggles with being able to do that.
Yeah, it makes the shape of the tire in the corner more consistent. It the tire doesn't deform as much.
Yeah.
And so the grip is more consistent.
Yep. So let's get these down closer. Right now we're just trying to remove material because they're about probably a millimeter above the surface of or above the tip of the air rib. And we're really probably only shooting for like, definitely less than half a millimeter. And this comes off really quick, and you don't really need to baby this like you would a tire. Sometimes a little too quick, so just be careful that if you're loading it up quite a bit, let it actually take off what you've already started by adjusting your truer. And so now we're starting to get closer down there. At that point, just kind of let it run out. And then we're going to take it off and do a little bit of a test fit and see how it feels, and decide if we need to go further or not. Actually, I'm just going to set the stop right now so I know where we're at. There it is. Height there. This is probably on the taller side of where you would want it. That's good. You can always take off more. You can't put it back on. So we're just going to test fit a tire. Whenever I'm putting a tire on, I always look for the seam where it was molded. And sometimes you'll see it also will have like a dimple from where they did the injection. I always like to put that on the inside for rear tires. Like that's the side that's never going to get really loaded up. So if there are some inconsistencies in the surface because of that mold line, it's better they're on that side than they are on the outside. The big thing here too is just making sure we're not pinching the foam over the air ribs. So you can kind of lift the tire going around, making sure that it's all settled in there. And same thing on this one. Just make sure the tires fit really well and that there's nothing holding it up.
Yeah, imagine a 1-to-1 tire if it were not mounted perfectly on the wheel, how that would feel in your steering wheel.
Yeah, and this is really, from my bike racing background, when you were putting tubes in a bike tire, like you're going around making sure you didn't pinch that tube. Same thing here. You're making sure you didn't pinch that foam and get it caught between the rim and the tire. So this actually, putting this on here, feels pretty good at this height, to be honest. I don't know that I would go too much lower than this. This is a tire that's made for a 16 millimeter wheel, so it's a little bit tighter of a tire anyway. It's going to compress the foam more on its own. And so I think because of that, you might want to leave it a bit higher. Give that a feel and see. So it's definitely got some good compression. It's holding the tire just a little bit off the air rib, which is really what you want. You want that vertical compliance that you get from not having it right on a solid surface like that. So I think we're going to run with this. Typically, if you were going to adjust it more, if it was a little bit high, you want to do that at really small increments at this point. There's not a lot on there, so you're talking like, point, like 5 thousandths, or I don't know what that is. What's that in metric, Darius?
I'll have to use the
like 0.1 millimeters or like really small amounts at a time.
Yeah.
You just want to take off like a little bit and then retest fit. It's better to take the time again to do this now. It sucks to go down too far and then have to redo the whole thing from the beginning. So better to take some time, do more check and more test fits than trying to take too much off at once. So we're going to get this one on here. Same thing. Go around, make sure we didn't pinch anything. Make sure everything's seated right where it needs to be. Pretty good. Oh man, I just did my screwdriver in the glue. Okay, let's do some gluing. Yeah. Watch me mess up my tools live. So we're gonna put some glue on here. Again, this is that black rubberized CA glue. And just get yourself a nice, good God. It doesn't want to come out, doesn't it? Quickly. So, it can clog the bottle like it is right now.
It's coming out.
There we go. Good Lord. All right.
It's like the black goo from Prometheus.
I like to use little, like, toothpicks, specifically like the Diamond brand toothpicks. They just seem to be more consistent.
Shout out to Diamond Brand.
Because some of the cheaper ones, they're not always like round and they break easily. And really what I'm doing is just kind of, you can kind of pinch the tire a little bit, get it to lift off so you can fit that in there with the glue. And then you want to roll it as you're going through there. Because if you just slide it, you're just going to kind of squeegee. I don't either. If you slide it, you're just going to kind of push the glue out of the way. If you're rolling it, you're going to leave a trail behind of glue where you just drag that toothpick so you get a nice even coverage. You don't need to put a ton because you don't want to get it just absolutely everywhere. You can kind of go back and forth there and just work on it in sections. It's going to tack up pretty quickly on the last section. So once you're done with that, like that, try not to break that bond off again or, you know, separate it again. So we got that.
And you want to make sure that the toothpick doesn't go beyond the air rib.
Yeah, the other thing is making sure, especially if you've lowered the air rib, it's real easy to get that in there too deeply, and then you're going to get a bunch of CA glue on that foam. So kind of angle it down, make sure the tip's going to bump up against the little bit of that air rib that's left. That's really helpful. And just make sure you're not going crazy. It's not actually all that critical to get perfect glue on the inside of there, because the other part we'll do at the end where we kind of bead lock the tire onto the wheel helps really hold it on. It's better to err on the side of not getting glue on that foam because, again, that's just going to be a hard bump through the foam insert once it absorbs it all up and dries. So we've got that on there pretty well. You can kind of, at this point, just kind of spread around some of those lumps. This is actually going to come off again when we true the outer sidewall. So this is not the last time we're going to touch this. So it's not super critical that it's perfectly clean. The other thing we'll do at this point is use a little bit of CA kicker so that we can get working on this wheel quicker. One of the ways we've done this, and I think I've demonstrated in a past video for Electric Dreams, is you can put this wheel inside of a small cardboard box and use an aerosol CA kicker and kind of fog the inside of that box, not spraying it directly onto the wheel, just fogging the area around it. And that doesn't really get into the rubber. In a pinch, you can use like the little pump bottles of CA kicker and just kind of spritz the outside of it lightly. You don't want to get a ton of this on the rubber. It's not really great for it. So in this,
your nose.
yeah, or in your nose. So in this case, I'm just going to kind of give it a light little spray, not directly into a fan. And let that harden up so that we can do the backside, and that's already dried. And then same thing on the backside.
And the secondary benefit here is that the CA vapors don't affect the rubber as much. So you can still get a soft, compliant sidewall without having the CA fog or whiten the sidewall if you use the kicker, accelerator, whatever you want to call it. Now, do you have to use the NSR header card on NSR tires? Is that the glue? Does it make a difference?
No difference, but
Okay.
you know, we like to be brand correct. Cool. Okay, those are pretty well dried up.
Let's see those real quick.
Back sides, front sides. Again, it doesn't need to be pretty right now.
Cool.
We're going to end up truing this so that it's perfectly flat, and that's going to take that outside layer off. So next thing then is we're going to do what we call a bulk cut, which is really just to chew off enough material to get it closer to our final dimension. You can do this a lot faster. With tire truing, there's kind of a no man's land. You're either taking off rubber fast enough that it never heats up, or taking it off so slow that it just can't heat up. If you're in the middle, you're going to start building up heat in the rubber. That's when you're going to get gummy lines, and it's just going to stop cutting, and you end up with a whole mess. So initially, we're going to chew off rubber really quickly, get it to close to our final dimension, and then we'll start working a little finer, and probably switch to some finer grit drums as well, so that the surface is a little better when we start our final surface prep.
Cool. And what's the grit on here right now for your bulk cut?
These are 80 grit drums. If you only have one choice of grit, I think 120 probably works the best all around for everything with rubber tires. 180 gets like a little tough to where it can sometimes burnish before it cuts fast enough. It ends up just being a little more delicate in terms of not warming up the tire too much. But usually I'll do 80 grit for bulk cutting and 120 for a finish cut, and then we'll do some surface finish after that by hand to get it actually nice and smooth.
Is there a benefit of using diamond wheel above the sand?
I
Paper?
have a diamond wheel for my Backtrack. I haven't really found it to be all that beneficial because I feel like it doesn't. It either doesn't dissipate the heat very well, or I'm not sure. It just hasn't cut as well. Yeah, it's just I haven't had good luck with it. Plus, these are on this because you can change these all the time. It's always fresh
Yeah.
grit.
Yeah.
The only real benefit to a diamond wheel is that in general it's like perfectly round, whereas these sleeves, like there's no way that's going to be machinist round. So the more perfectly round it is, the more contact you're making all the way around the drum. But again, these have done a better job.
Okay.
These wheels, this is kind of a personal choice because the grub screw sits inside of the rubber. So for my wheels for this race on this wheel and tire combo, I was putting a little hole here to get the wrench through so that you're not stressing that glue joint right there, trying to tighten and loosen the wheel. There's a bunch of ways you can do that. I have, but this goes through nice and easy. Really anything that's sharp. And just kind of make a little point through there. Right above where the set screw is. Again, that's going to save that glue joint around there. Because every time you put the wrench in there, you're going to kind of stress that glue joint by pushing it up. So now you can just get the wrench, get a little twist, get it through there, and you can get it right into the set screw. And then you can mount those up. Okay. I'm gonna get this out of my way for now before I get glue everywhere. Started with this. Give the drum clean again, get that foam off of there. And then with this truer, because it's an AC truer, one of the ways that I kind of monitor how hard I'm cutting is with an outlet monitor. So I use the wattage display on here. You could also use amperage. On a DC truer, you usually would use the amperage on your power supply. So right now we're going to go for a pretty hard cut because we're just trying to bolt cut these. And I'll go for like 10 watts over baseline, where on like a finish cut it might be like 1 watt over baseline. So you get kind of a feel for the difference there. And then we're going to be using alcohol to cool, and we've got the fans on these, so there's always air moving over them and helping the alcohol to evaporate and cool. Actually, you can turn this to catch the carriage before it gets there. Figure out where we're going to start making contact here. I like to use the stop as kind of a sanity check so I don't go crazy and go way farther than I mean to. And then, again, you're going to push pretty hard in there. And use the alcohol to keep it clean. Let it evaporate and cut. You don't need to pull the wheels back or the tires back off the drum when you're doing this. And when you're pushing this hard, it's going to cut really quickly. And you can watch the wattage will just keep going down as it's cutting, so you can see it actually working. What size were you doing your tires at?
19.5, 19.8.
Okay. So once we feel like we've got these like pretty round all the way around, we'll pull them off and measure and see where we're at. I can feel with the tip of this bottle, I can still feel we've got a bump across this one.
You gotta be careful with the needle tip bottles as well, because you could stab the tire easily.
Yeah, I don't actually put the tip on there. I put the side of it on there. But yeah, you do need to be a little careful.
And there's really no reason why you need to use a needle tip. You could use like a dropper in a pinch.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of different ways. I think I've seen people use like a Q-tip or yeah.
That's a nice idea.
You just need a way of getting the alcohol on the surface. For me, I always have a needle tip bottle that's sitting around for so many other things that it's just one less step, I guess, to. So we've already hit that stop.
Todd, do you adjust the voltage at all while you cutting, or you always cutting at the same?
So for bulk cutting, I'll usually go like full speed on this. I'm not right now, but I don't care so much. Like, it's not going to get that much of a dip. It might get a little bit of one, but you're going to finish cut it at a slower speed and a lighter touch in a bit here anyway, so it's not all that.
So if you would cut with the power supply, do you have any estimate of what voltage you'll be cutting at?
I think when I did this on a Hootie, it was 8 volts.
Well, that was a specific tire as well.
That was a G25. But you're going at it pretty hard, so if you try to do that at a low voltage, you'll bog the motor.
Yeah.
But when you do a finish cut, then you're down at like 4, like the typical like 4, 3.5, somewhere in there. Again, it's like, it's kind of like feeds and speeds on on like a lathe or anything. You're either going so fast that you don't build up heat, or you're going just light enough that it's never gonna, or rather so fast you're taking off material faster than it can build up heat, or light enough that you're not building up the heat. So let's, I can still feel something on the outside of that one. I'm gonna pull this back and take a look at it. So I think we've got it still, yeah, one little spot here where we're still low, and you can kind of see that right there. You can actually see where the seam is on the tire. So we'll just go a little bit further. We're going to get it perfectly round before we take a measurement, because that's kind of the minimum. Real quick before we finish the bolt cut on this, I want to show you a trick that you can use if you end up going a little too aggressively, or if you build up heat in the tires and it gets like a black sticky streak in it, because a lot of times that just kind of means that tire is either toast for some people, or you know, it's just going to be a real long, hard time to true it after that. What you can do there is actually put the alcohol in the tire when it's off of the drum and pulse it really hard into the drum while it's still wet. And that's going to just like pull off that sticky part and get it down to clean rubber again. And then you'll notice when you go back then and start to cut again, it's actually going to cut like it did right at the start. So if that's off the drum like this, and you get alcohol on it while it's off, and then just pulse it in there like that. Keeping it wet. Anytime it's in contact with the drum while you're doing this, it should be wet.
And this is particularly useful for like a G25 or an AS20,
Yeah.
something that gets really sticky.
Some of those tires, like even the Revo tires too, have some tendency with that. So it's just, you know, it's a way of kind of getting back to cutting. Because a lot of times what will happen, you know, if you get that, then it just takes forever to get that tire finished, and you just waste a whole bunch of time. And so this gets that off, resets it, you can get back to truing at a decent speed, and then you're good to go.
Cool. So how long have you been actually working on these, just for a time reference, since we did do a cut?
I mean, I think we've been cutting for under 10 minutes for sure. Like,
Okay.
And we're pretty close. There's just one little part that's still low spot, so we'll get that off of there, and then we'll be ready to do finish cutting. So we got our tires perfectly bolt cut round yesterday. It took a little bit because there was one low spot on the tire. So really that's all we're trying to do for these tires with bolt cutting, because the size ends up being pretty close to where it needs to be. Some tires, the actual tire ends up being quite a bit larger than what you needed to be your final size. So you could just take it off and measure it, keep setting your stop, and keep bolt cutting until you get close-ish to that final size. I would say probably a safe place to stop would be 0.5 millimeter over. As you kind of get more experience with it, you'll figure out that you can get a little bit closer to that final size before you go to finish cutting. I've gone ahead already and changed the drums out to 120 grit drums. And this is what I like to get a little bit closer to a finished surface on it.
Can you show the difference?
Yeah, and so you've got an 80 grit drum that's, you know, quite a bit rougher than, say, 120.
And then what is that rougher grit? How does that benefit the tire trimming process?
This is when you're doing your bolt cutting, right? So this is going to take off more material. There's kind of a diminishing returns, or it actually, I've tried going with rougher grits, and it ends up, just because they don't have the density of abrasive particles, like it actually cuts slower. So 80 grit seems to be the sweet spot for bolt cutting. 120 grit is really good for finish cutting. If you can only use one grit, 120 is probably the one to use, because it can really do both. Anything finer than 120 starts to get in the area where it is a little too fine, and it's more easy to heat up the tire and get kind of those gummy lines in it.
Yep.
So all we're going to do here, because we're really just shooting for kind of a ballpark size with this, of keeping the tire as big as we can while keeping it at its final size. Generally, I'd say the difference between the depth of like the lines in the tire from the sanding drum between an 80 grit and a 120 is about like 10 thousandths of an inch. So it's not a whole lot. You really don't need to take off too much more with the 120 grit drums to get those lines nice and smoothed out. So the other thing to note is when you're bulk cutting, you could really do it at like a full speed. When you're starting to do your finish cuttings, when you kind of want to slow it down to something more traditional, like if you're using a Hootie, 4 volts or even lower sometimes, is good to slow it down to. And for this, we use the speed control on the Backtrack to kind of slow it down a bit, just mostly so that we are not ballooning out the center of the tire while we're truing it, because what will happen then is when you stop, you'll end up with a dip in your tire. So let's go ahead and get started with, and since we haven't trued on these drums yet, we're going to use that abrasive cleaner again and just going to get any of the old rubber off of there. And find where this is on the stop.
So what's your methodology on using the stops here?
In this case, because we only want to take out a little bit, I'm going to find where the tire touches on the stop first. And then, right about here, I'm going to pick it up with this screw. Right, so now I have the stop set where my tire is pretty much touching. And I'm going to increment it forward. What I know on this truer is about 10 thousandths.
So you're going to set the hard stop.
Correct. So I'm setting the hard stop to where it needs to be, so I avoid kind of taking off too much material. And then I'll use this to slowly feed the tire into the drum. Normally, if I were doing a tire to a very specific size, when I got the tire round, that stop, I'm going to measure the tire at that stop and then adjust from there. We're picking this up on another day, so I don't remember where this stop was set. So if you don't remember, this is kind of the way to do it. So we're going to set the speed here really quick. It's a little bit fast. Okay. Now on here, with this truer, I'm going to take really just no more than like a 2-watt cut over baseline. As far as on a Hootie, I feel like it's about 0.2 of an amp, about somewhere in there. You really don't want to go too far over. Some of that's just going to be experience. If you're finding that you're getting a lot of overheating and gummy lines, then just go in smaller steps.
They use certain things in their racing to protect on the ones that do not have a lot of power.
And you're going to still be hitting it with the alcohol
Very mild like this.
to keep it cool. Because we're taking a lighter cut, you're not going to have to do it necessarily as frequently as you did during the bulk cut. And then you're going to let it dry and then keep cutting while it's dry. And just keeping an eye on either your wattage or your amperage on here and seeing it cut. Now it's going to cut slower obviously now. And in particular on the with this truer and this monitor, sometimes the baseline can drift a little bit, so it's never a bad idea to just kind of back the tire off and recheck, make sure that your baseline hasn't drifted.
Park the car there, and the power in your lane does not come on for 10 seconds after everybody else is out. Right. So first of all, there's no way that anybody's going to hit you. And second of all, you get that 10 seconds. It teaches you very, very quickly to stay on.
So we're just going to keep going with this until we hit the stop. And once we hit the stop, we'll give it a check, make sure that the surface looks how we want it to look, that we don't need to go any further. And then we'll start working on truing the sidewalls and then doing the round over before we actually do the final surface finish of the tire.
Guys like Gary Portman was there, Patrick Brow was there, the model car. The cars were incredible.
Yeah, I'd see it drifted down like a whole lot.
Grab something from the side.
Yeah, and that drift is actually pretty normal too as the motor heats up. You'll find that the amp draw starts to go down, the wattage here goes down as the motor warms up a bit. So again, always good to recheck that baseline. One of the other things that you can do as you start to get especially closer to your final size, this one doesn't have too much side movement in it. I know some others have more, but you can also kind of like knock the pulley a little bit side to side, change where those sanding lines are hitting the drum. We're going to do some more surfacing on this, so it's not super critical. This is better done usually with like the end of a, I like to use the butt end of these and just kind of push on it a little bit with that because they spin and then I'm not getting my finger in it. Again, we're going to surface this tire later on, so it's not super critical, but it can help shorten that process a bit.
The only thing he had lacking on that thing was the jacket, is he didn't have the little Shelby logo, so I made it myself. So this is the process when this is the moment when you're actually taking your time.
Yes.
It's better really pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is the crucial one.
the first 80% of the tire is going to be 20% of the time,
Yeah.
and then the last 20% is going to be about 80% of the time. And, you know, it's give or take.
Yeah,
Not
which is
exact
what
science.
is what people end up getting the most frustrated with, right? When they say they spent 3 hours on a tire, it's because they did this.
They lost the time on the
whole,
front.
they used this process to do the sizing before they did the finish.
Oh, okay.
And then if you were going to do like, if we do the finish that we call an inter, which is like the lines in the tires, we would leave the 80 grit drum on, but we would be doing it like this.
Yeah.
And then because you're doing it really light and keeping it cool, the lines are really clean around, and that works.
And also,
Really
like
great.
you said, the side movement, the side tapping will help to minimize that line. Like,
And you wouldn't, if you were doing an inter, you actually wouldn't want to side tap because you want the lines in it. So inter for us is like something that's just like an F1, right? It's intermediate. It's got some track, some tread on it. Because the track that we run on is gloss epoxy, there are a lot of times where you just get way too much grip, and the tire doesn't want to slide, and so those lines in the tire actually help it to slide really predictably on a really high grip surface. It works really well on spray glued tracks too. Like if you're racing on an old 24 spill track that's got residual glue in it, it works really
how
great.
you will classify this surface what you've got here?
Here, I think it's probably somewhere in between. There is some, because it's not like a gloss, shiny surface, it's not quite, I don't know that I would call it super high grip, but it is still relatively high grip. And there may be certain cars that just by their nature don't want to transition well, and sometimes an inter can work. Now, it doesn't work with every tire. So a G25, we know it works really well on a G25. And I think I had mentioned to you yesterday, it works on a super grip, but it will polish out eventually on the track with a super grip. It will too on a G25, it just takes a lot longer because it's a more durable rubber. Let's see, we've drifted down even more.
So for this competition, what was the diameter of your classic tire?
Mine I think was like an 18.8.
I think that's what mine ended up being too.
18.8, yeah. We ran them a little large because I think we wanted a little bit of extra rollout, but also more sidewall flex.
Yeah, those are PWA wheels.
Oh, we ran them a little large because the air ribs are high. Yeah.
So what about 19.5, 19.8? Did I say even?
I did 19, I think.
19? And we're talking yesterday about removing the air, so grinding them down as low as possible. How are you doing that? Are you doing that on the tour as well?
You can.
You can. We typically, so our rules allow you to use any 16 millimeter wheel.
Yep.
And so we generally will use like an NSR low profile gear wheel or an MR Slotcar low profile.
Yep.
So that we don't have to modify the wheel.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can, if your rules allow, modify the air rib to whatever diameter you want.
Okay.
And
The other thing you can do is just spin it on here and use like a small file or something,
Yes.
and take them down. You probably aren't going to have any issues with them being out of round, and really it's less important because they're not actually supporting the surface of the tire.
They're only for alignment.
Yeah, they
Yes.
hold the foam insert in
Yeah.
place, they hold the tire in place.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gone so far as to use a wheel made for foam tires and use double-sided tape to put the foam insert on the tire itself to hold it centered in place, and then glue the tire on there with no air ribs at all.
Yeah.
And it works really, really well. It's more difficult to get it all
Some
set,
of
but
the tires we have here on the Proxy, specifically the GT3 Proxy, we have incredible cars. There's a one car from Czechia. Last year, car did 8.2 second lap on this track, and there's a big hope that this car feels actually way faster than the last year car may break that 8-second barrier.
Oh, wow.
And he's doing the F1 style real solid, which will be smooth and will actually support what you're saying here.
Yeah.
You've got the insert inside the tire and the completely flat surface.
I feel like this tire might not have gone back on, or this wheel might not have gone back on at exactly the same plane,
Yeah.
because I can feel a bit of a,
I can see it in the camera too.
yeah,
That part of it is wet and part of it is dry.
real quick. So the thing that the thing you can actually do there though, or where I think the issue is when you put one back on and have the other one off. This originally the set screws were aligned, were at the same spot, and now they weren't. So in an ideal world, every slot car wheel would be the same made for the exact same perfect axle, and we would have indicated these axles on the truer, but
well, sometimes when you tighten the set screw, you actually can alter the orientation of the wheel.
yeah. So I might have to go a little bit further just to allow us enough room to get that back to perfectly round.
Closer.
Yeah, you could feel it. It's closer. And you can start to see now the lines on the tire are a lot they're a lot shallower now. A little easier to see once you get the alcohol on there. In fact, you can actually see the center where it hasn't quite got to the low spot in the center because we spun these pretty fast when we did the bolt cut.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got our surface looking pretty good here. We've got those lines kind of down to the 120 grit mark. Obviously, this is still not our finished surface, but it's going to be a lot easier to get it there from here. What we're going to do now is start to true the sidewall so that it's perfectly flat before we do the roundover. And this is something I like to do mainly because it gets it to a really squared edge before you do that. Anything that's not perfectly flat in that, if you do the roundover when it's in that state, then you're going to kind of mirror that bump all the way around in your roundover, and it's just a little better to do it squared up like this. So leaving the tires on the truer, I like to use a hard sanding stick for this. You can use a soft one, but it's really a lot harder. With this, it's easier to feel when there's still a bump because it's hard. You're getting immediate
And you just made that,
feedback.
right?
Yeah, this is just a little piece of 1/4 inch ply. Anything that's a hard flat surface, and this is just adhesive
Like a
sandpaper.
paint mixing stick.
Yeah, you could use a paint, or I've even used like popsicle sticks.
Okay.
Those work fine. And it actually is really nice because you can peel this stuff off and then put another fresh grit on there. This is 180 grit. 120 to 180 probably works fine for this. Anything rougher is going to not really leave you the best finish. So we're just going to run it on this. You can use the same speed you were using to true it. You could use a faster speed, but it's really, again, you're doing this by hand, so it's better to probably keep it under control. On this truer too, you've got like a nice little thing you can use as a rest here, and you're just going to hold it like this and kind of start, and you can hear it not making solid contact all the way around, right? So you're going to go until you can hear and feel it making contact everywhere. The sound's going to get really consistent. Yeah, so you can hear how it's like, yep. And then when you want to really check it, after we get it like, you can use the corner, just a really small piece. And see there, you can hear, because then it's not using all that surface area. So now you're really truly hearing if it's. Okay. So we've got that pretty good. Yeah, that's nice and true, flat surface. So I can actually turn this here, you can look at it. Got the outside of that really good. If you've got a tire that overhangs like a ton and you want to get it flat, the other way you can do that, if you're taking off a lot, is to use an X-Acto. And so you're spinning it, you need to use a brand new blade. Don't use a blade you've been using, it needs to be fresh, because the sharper it is, the smoother this goes. If you use a dull blade, you're gonna end up having just chunks of rubber going everywhere. It's gonna snag. And all you need to do is just very carefully press it into the tire until you take off that donut. It's better to be conservative about this, because sometimes it's easy to dip it a little too, take off a little too much. So you can always use the X-Acto knife and then finish it with the sanding stick But this can help if you have like a lot to take off. Doing it with the sanding stick will take forever, so use the X-Acto knife method. We're not going to do the inside on this one because we need to maintain the lettering for this race. Otherwise, I would also do the inside same way, but we do need to do the other tire. And if you remember back when we glued these up and I said we were going to take that glue off, this is why it ends up coming off.
Beautiful facility now. Beautifully painted, well decorated. Full-size cars on the wall. Like there's a Formula Atlantic, all chassis and body, and Lola Formula Atlantic hanging from the wall.
So we got this one nice and true now too.
The Atlantic track has a four-sided 72-inch.
So now we got a nice flat on that side as well. Now we're going to start doing the roundover. I do the rough part of the roundover with this sanding stick. Really, primarily most of the material you're going to take off is going to be at that 45-degree angle, right? And so I'm basically just going to hold it kind of with my thumb here and turn it around to get the roundover started. When you're doing this too, that's another reason why this hard sanding stick is really nice, is that you can feel when you've got it smooth and you're not getting any bumps as it goes around. So you're effectively truing the roundover too while you're doing this. It can help to not let the tires sit on one spot of the stick too, because you'll end up building up heat in that one spot. And it will just not cut as well either. Visually, it might not always look like you're taking off a ton of material, because when you do it this way, it's going to be a little bit rougher of a finish. You can go really, really light touch some tires. If you're, like, let's say for instance, you're not going to lighter fluid polish it later, you might want the finish to be a little bit closer to final from this. And in that case, you really just want to barely let this go on there. Because you can see I'm getting some rubber chunking, but the way we're doing this tire, it's not going to matter. It's too much. I mean, you don't want to go crazy, but...
So sometimes you can see like the shoulder, it start to crack. That will be too much pressure, too much speed, or is just the part of the process which will later be finished with the lighter liquid?
When you say the shoulders start to crack, what do you mean?
So when you're running, sometimes when I threw the rubber tires and I'm doing similar, let's say I fold the paper, sanding paper, and I'm trying to, wave it from side to side, and then later when I stop, I can see the edge of the tire cracking actually in some places.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that might be too much pressure. Like even with that pressure I was putting on there, right, you can see that the rubber's chunking out a little bit, but that's not so much that we're not going to be able to take that off.
Okay.
First with like one of these sanding pads, and then with the lighter fluid to get the real final finish.
Okay.
So I'm going to do the inside edge now, and again, because we're preserving that label here, I'm only going to do it kind of at a minimum angle. You know, again, if that wasn't the case, I would do the roundover pretty much just the same as I did that. So we're really just going to kind of start at the 45 and go towards this way and not go past that.
So why is a roundover important?
The roundover is going to help your tire kind of transition in the turns, right? So if you get like a hard edge, you can really like end up loading up the outside of the tire quite a bit, and get a little unpredictable behavior from the car, right? So it's not going to slide as predictably. And any bumps in the track like that could potentially catch on, right? So it's really just helping it glide over the track surface better.
So would you say it's a trade-off between grip and forgiveness? Like is there ever a use case where you would leave no roundover?
I can't think of one. I don't know, what about... Yeah, sure, maybe a dragster.
Okay.
I don't know, is there any time you would use a wheel with that run? Yeah, I can't think of one off the top of my head where that would be an advantage.
So one of the lessons that I learned last year at Slot It was that when the tire is cornering and the forces are going through the tire laterally, the shape of the sidewall, the shape of that roundover, influences how the tire deforms in the corner. And so if you don't control that, the tire can bunch up in the corner and do weird things where it builds up tension and then releases the tension suddenly, or the contact patch can change. So the roundover helps reduce that or eliminate it.
Is the difference between the inner or outer side of the tire for the radiuses? Like both should be done the same way? Like the inner side will cross the slot more often than the outer side, right?
Yeah, I think the inner side's not going to get loaded up as much ever, right? So it's never going to lean on the inner roundover. So I don't think it's as important that it's as deep.
Okay.
So you can have a more of a roundover in the outside. It's still important to have a roundover in the inside, but I think.
See, I was always going the other way.
But for your racing here, because you get tire wear, right? So when you look at the tires from 908 from yesterday, the roundovers were starting to get kind of squared because the tire had worn down. So you would probably want to be potentially go bigger, because you know at the end of the race, you'll still have some roundover left.
More hands, less talking. Nobody wants to hear us talk.
And the other thing with this is sometimes you'll feel like you've got a bump in your roundover out of nowhere. And almost always what that is like one of these tire boogers here is just kind of stuck somewhere on the roundover and is going around. And if you just kind of drag this like that, eventually it's going to pull it off and you'll feel that it's smooth again. So that's not something to really worry about too much.
Don't pick your tire boogers, wipe them off.
Yes.
This piece down the side, it's a single decal from there to there. The whole piece is a single decal.
Okay. So all of these now, you can see we've got kind of a rough surface on these. Before we go to doing any kind of lighter fluid, we're going to clean those up a bit. I like to use these 3M sanding sponges for that. This is a fine grade, so this is about a 400 grit. And this is a microfine grade, which is like a 1200 grit. This is a good one. The 400 grit fine is good for getting that kind of stuff off. So you can actually just put some of the alcohol on it, and while it's wet, just kind of work that across there. You can see we're taking off like the chunks. It's pretty good about not getting, because it's 400 grit, it's not taking off a lot of material, right? It's just kind of smoothing those chunks out. And even just that little bit, like look at how much smoother that roundover is.
It looks great.
Where do you get those sponges?
You can find these on Amazon. They're a 3M product. If you just search for 3M sanding sponge, you'll find them.
Oh, perfect.
And they're nice because the abrasive is actually flexible too, so it's not like paper where it
I use
sits.
400 too, but Sandpaper.
Yeah. So these are good because it fits the contour really well. So then we're gonna keep going on these just to get them a little smoother before we polish them. And this also, because it's a sponge, this now will help kind of shape the roundover a little more. Since we've already got it perfectly round,
You put some lighter fluid on it.
this is rubbing alcohol.
Oh, okay.
So in this case, it's keeping it cool, but it's also, because we're doing it wet on the sponge, it's lubricating it, which allows you to kind of go a little harder at it. You can do this without the alcohol and just kind of very lightly drag it around there, right? So that's,
Otherwise, it's gonna shear.
but it's a lot easier to like start getting chunking and tearing if you do it that way. So
didn't know they had sponsorships
And then you can even do this on like on the surface a little bit, because we did a 120 grit drum, so this will knock some of the peaks off of this before we use lighter fluid to polish it. You don't want to push too hard, right? You don't want to deform the tire, especially because we've got a foam insert in there. So you're really just kind of trying to go back and forth and knock some of the peaks off of those before you... Anything you can do to lessen the amount of time you need to have lighter fluid in contact with the tire is better. The lighter fluid can soften the rubber, and it can really cause it to start degrading. It starts to break down the bonds in the rubber. So when you hear people talking about tires balling up or just getting too soft and too much grip, like there are some people that true their tires with lighter fluid. There's some people who have done really well with that. In my opinion, I think it ends up getting into all of the rubber in the tire, and it just softens. It doesn't make them last. They're not as resilient.
Does your wheels are air system?
Yes.
Yeah, these are the wheels we're using for the GT race.
Did they have a cushion in
Yeah, there's a foam insert in there. So now what we're going to do, we're going to move on to doing the lighter fluid to polish this. Before we do that, though, I want to kind of clean these off, because you don't really want to... The lighter fluid is almost going to kind of like meld that rubber together. It's not a mechanical process, right? It's almost like a chemical process. So anything that's on the surface of that tire when you do that it's possible for it to get kind of melted into the surface of that. So they want to be really clean when you do that.
Oh, okay.
I also like to take the drums off once I'm done using the drums for things, just because then if my hands are around this, it's much better to not have spinning abrasive close to them.
I was just over to Buddy Mine's.
And since we put the holes in there to take them off, you got to be just really careful about finding those holes again. It's actually easier once the tire is polished to find the hole, because
So, I tried to borrow your friend there. The week before when I was there, he showed me the circuit board that he
and just use a lint roller like you would if you were racing, kind of clean these off. Get any of that abrasive off there. So you can see, like, the one thing that 400 grit sanding sponge, the abrasive particles are kind of loose sometimes, so they can get on your hands a bit. You just want to end up with a clean surface. Get the sides, anywhere you might have some, there's like a little bit of dust inside of there.
And then he showed me a rudder controller.
Yeah, we've got that one
That's an old relic, because that's only like an
pretty clean.
relic. Yeah.
We'll put that back on and do the other one.
It's like a work of art.
This one was on this side.
Early relic. Relic controllers were very nice. Dan Relic was
Oh, actually, you know what? Sorry, I'm not going to put it on this side. I lied.
used to make those controllers. They were
On this truer, because there's this in the way, and now we're going to be kind of polishing this by hand,
8-band to eventually
I kind of moved to doing them one at a time, and I do them on this side where I've got a little more access to all parts of the tire without needing to get my hands in between mechanical parts. And then normally I would use a round cotton pad for this and kind of fold it into quarters. In this case, I just have some microfiber towel. So I'm going to fold it up into like a little thicker pad. And what I like to do is take this folded edge here. For the round over, this works really great to push that kind of straight into the round over. So we're going to get this wet with lighter fluid, and then we're just going to push that into the round over like that. And it's going to get a nice contour, and it's going to, from the lighter fluid, polish it really smooth. The thing that you want to remember when you're doing lighter fluid polish is if anytime you start to feel whatever the cloth or the cotton or anything dragging on the tire, you need more lighter fluid. You don't want it to have friction here more than it needs. But you also don't want to soak this thing. Otherwise, you're going to have lighter fluid flying everywhere, and it's also hard to see what you're doing. You can keep going at the same speed we were using. It doesn't need to be going super fast for this. Err on the side of it being slower. This is starting to feel a little dry. You can see already, like on the cloth though, right? Like we're starting to take rubber. You can kind of slide it up and down a bit, just so it's not on the same spot of the tire. And then on the inside, same thing, but we're going to be a little carefuler not to go too far down to get that round over. And so I'll just stop this real quick before we do the center part of the tire. You can start to see just how smooth that gets it. And now we're going to do that same thing to the whole tire. And get the whole tire nice and polished. So let's make sure this has enough on it. Here we're now going to use the flat side, right? So we're just going to kind of back and forth with this. You don't want to press super hard. You kind of want to use just like a light to medium pressure. If you go too hard, sometimes you can actually get the tire out around doing this. So better for it to take a little longer and do a lighter pressure. And you can keep switching to like the cleaner parts of the rag as these start to get gummed up with rubber coming off the tire. Now the other thing to remember too is that when you do lighter fluid, if you're trying to get to a specific size, you need to leave a little bit on there, a little bit of size on there, because the lighter fluid's going to take off some rubber. In general, I think for 120 grit sanding lines, I say about 5 thousandths of an inch. For 80 grit sanding lines, it's about 15 thousandths of an inch over your final size. I'm sure Ian can put some conversions to metric for that.
Heck no.
So the microfiber would be the best.
I
material.
really prefer.
Because some people are using like a kitchen towel wraparound.
I prefer a cotton pad actually. The like cotton rounds.
Okay.
Because cotton seems to hold lighter fluid better. It's like same thing that they put like in a Zippo lighter. Like it's a cotton pad, right? So it's also probably a little bit smoother than this if you do get one, but.
Of course, no, I can come quick for you.
So what is your speed with your
I'm not totally sure. It doesn't need to be anything specific to do this. You don't want to go crazy. So like,
Usually lower.
yeah, err on the side of doing it slower rather than faster.
3 or 4.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for a hoodie, like 3 or 4 volts.
It depends on what kind of gun you have. The trigger.
No, more truer dependent.
But what I like is, can I try to show the guy?
And so you want to kind of check this every once in a while. When you have the lighter fluid on there, sometimes it's hard to see if you're getting all the lines out, especially as you get more close towards the end. So you can see we still have a few as they're spinning around there. We're just going to keep going to get those last ones off of there. Again, if you feel any drag in this, you don't want it to be dry. You need it to slide on the surface. So we're getting pretty close.
Yep.
There's a few little tiny lines in it. If you're on a track where like this surface we're racing on here, where it's flat latex and you're going to get a little bit of tire wear anyway, I don't know that I would like worry too much about this being perfectly slick.
My tires look like that.
If you were going on like a gloss epoxy surface where you're not going to get much wear, and you're going for a slick tire surface, then maybe spend the extra little bit of time to make these lines, get these lines out of there. You just want to be careful to not go crazy with this and end up going so far that either you make the tire out of round or get it so that it's, domed or misshapen at all. So we stopped that. You can see we've got some lines in there still. Some of that's from the pad.
God, that tire's terrible.
Now, you don't really want to leave it like this because you don't really want that lighter fluid that's on the surface to keep sitting on there. It's not really going to be great for the rubber that's underneath that. And that's where I use these microfine, like 1200 grit sponges. So the same thing we did with the other one, just get it with some alcohol and run it over the surface. And you're really kind of just taking that top layer off.
You're breaking the surface tension there, kind of opening the surface back up.
Yeah, you're really just like buffing that surface off. And you can see as it starts to dry off, now we've got like a real matte finish on that tire.
Yeah, which is going to allow it to absorb more of the oil and make a better bond with the track surface. It's like the difference between like when a Formula One tire comes out of the blanket and it's glossy versus when it's scuffed.
So,
And this is steel 400 grit?
no, this is a 1200 grit
1200
pad.
grit, okay.
Really, we're not trying to do anything to this surface other than just kind of take that shininess, that lighter fluid off the surface. So the thing you'll notice then too, and it's particularly bad with these tires, is once you are... Sure.
Yeah. When you, sorry, I'm gonna take a seat.
No, you're fine.
When you go from the hoodie, you get some lines, okay?
Yep.
Because of the sandpaper, I would say, or the sanding. How do you get rid of these lines? Are you?
That's
doing
what we
it
were
with-
just...
with
So
only
this is
with
what
the-
it looked like before
Yes.
with the lines. And then we polished it with
With
this
the
and lighter
microfiber,
fluid.
only lighter fluid.
Yeah, and so
You
that's
see the
gonna...
side by side there?
Yeah.
So you got to get rid of the line before going to another process.
Yeah, once you get them smooth, then that's when you use
What
this.
is this?
It's just like a little abrasive pad.
Okay, that's
So
a
it's like
sanding
a
pad.
1200 grit.
Yes, okay.
And these are really nice. They're 3M, and the abrasive is really flexible.
Yes, I know that cabinet maker, so.
There you go. They're woodworking tools. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Oh, God.
He knows what they are.
Woodworking
You've seen them
people.
before. That's how I knew about them. And yeah, so the lighter fluid's going to get the lines off, and then you just kind of take that off with the alcohol and a 1200 grit pad. And the other thing then now is like, because we've been using alcohol to true these, the rubber kind of gets dried out a little bit. That's going to pull a lot of that oil out of the tire. And the other thing is the alcohol itself is going to kind of close the pores of the rubber. So you can do one of two things here. I know we just took some lighter fluid off of the tire. You can either take a microfiber towel with just a very light amount of lighter fluid and just do one wipe around before we put oil on, or you can use something like this Scale Auto Tire Cleaner, which is really great stuff. And this will also kind of start to get a little bit of moisture in the tire. We're just going to put that on there. This is the SC5300 5300. Different from the 5301 because the 5301 has some traction compound in it. And I don't really have any experience with that. This is a really good thing to reset. When rubber gets like really tacky, when the tires start to get really sticky, this is a good kind of like reset button to get those back to a good state. You want to just then like wipe that off with a microfiber towel. And you can already feel the tires like picked up a bit of oil compared to where it was after the alcohol. And then we use some of the NSR tire oil. And you're just going to put some of that on there. Spin that around a bit. You're not going to work it into the surface. You just want to spread it on the surface. And you're going to see like there are spots here where it's already soaking in, like even within 10 seconds, where we're getting dry spots on the tire. So, especially right after you true a tire, you're not using this to soften it. You're using this to get oil back in the tire, allow it to be a little more compliant to the surface.
It's not a traction compound.
It is not a traction compound.
You don't work your oil on.
It's a softener.
You're not really
You
softening.
don't work
Yeah.
the oil on the true.
No.
Just
Because I know there are people that do that. The other thing when you're doing that, sometimes it can also warm up the surface of the tire, and that's going to cause the rubber to start getting softer, breaking down, and then you get things like balling up on the inside and tires that aren't very stable, right?
You use the same technique on zero graining in ultra grip.
Yeah, this is a zero graining.
Yes.
I use this and anything that when the tire gets any rubber tire where
Ultra grip and super grip also.
if you are at the point though where you feel like the tire is already really sticky, where it's already got like a lot of grip, then I would just use this to clean it and then keep going. This is really just like if a tire feels particularly dry. You notice like some of the conditions this morning where the tires were like, they would grab and then kind of let go really quickly. That can sometimes be because the tire's dry. It can also just be because the track surface isn't warmed up yet, but it's good to have a little bit of oil in all rubber has an amount of oil in it, right? And there's a kind of a micro lubrication that happens between that and the track surface. So the one thing you want in slot car handling, right, is a really predictable breakaway. And this will help quite a bit with that.
So if I understand, you do all with lighter fluid, then only once already you had oil by the end and you let it dry.
Yep, so we're
Okay, how
right
many
now
times do you
we're
have
putting
it?
this on and just watching to see, okay, is it still soaking up oil and leaving like really quickly? If it's starting to, after like 30 seconds to a minute, not have like any dry spots, then we're gonna wipe it totally dry with a towel, let it sit for, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, because that oil is still gonna be kind of concentrated towards the surface. It's gonna distribute through the tire. You might go back to it the next day and feel it. It might feel kind of dry, and you can do this again, because it's not gonna always get through all the rubber right away. You will get to a point where it's like, okay, I don't need to do this anymore, because the tire's got. And so you can still see we're getting spots where it's
So what you
taking
do with
up
those
oil.
spots, you're putting some more oil.
So there's quite a bit still on the surface here. We just spread it around again,
Yeah.
make sure it's covering everything. It's not like eventually all this is going to get in the surface and it's probably going to spread around, right? It's not just going to sit in these little spots. We're just kind of trying to make sure it's getting, just like you put lotion on your hands or something. Like you just want to kind of get it around.
And the day before the race, do you put some oils again, or once you're done, you're done? never
You
do
can
that?
kind of feel it in the tire. Like if you feel the surface of this tire, even though it's rougher, it's dry, right? Like it's a very dry, like not a very, you're not getting that, yeah. You're not getting that like grip slide. It will like grab and let go, right? Whereas like if I were to now wipe this tire off, this will be an extreme version of it because there's still going to be like a little bit of oil on the surface.
I see you glue your tires. You let the glue go around.
Yeah, and so we're gonna redo these actually because when we trued the sidewalls, we took that original one off, and so we'll do another bead around there and kind of bead lock that outer edge of the tire on again, because you just want it to be on. You don't want that to ever come off.
Yes, that's what happened to me with these tires because they were too large, and I didn't do that. So I got some tire get off, and
When you treat your tires, these ones have sponge inside.
Yes.
How about when you do it without it?
The process is really the same without it. The one thing that can help if you have air tires without foam is when you do that glue on the outside, you can actually go further up the sidewall with that glue and stiffen up that sidewall. What that's going to help is not allowing this part of the tire to push this down. This will collapse into the air rib, and if you'll notice, like sometimes you get that rib right there, line right there. That's because it's getting pushed into that inner air rib. If you stiffen that outer sidewall, then you're going to get a consistent contact across the tire, and you should have less instances
So
of.
since when you start to put your sponge in? That's a new process? It's
I've
been around for a while.
I've used that a bunch, and it's if I can do it, I almost do. There's not really an instance where I wouldn't use a foam insert if it's allowed. A lot of our rules for the big races at Electric Dreams don't allow them anymore, which is where we had to kind of come up with ways of supporting the tire so that it doesn't collapse into that.
Always using your system.
Yeah, the solid rims just don't seem to have as much flexibility, compliance, like forward bite, because there's just not as much rubber than between the wheel and the. We